Right, friends. I'm being told the recording has begun. As you can see, my name is Stephen Manning from Integrity Ireland, Truth Matters, S.O.S. That's supposedly the S.O.S. refers to a book we did, the Save Our State, Save Our Souls, the S.O.S. Integrity Ireland S.O.S. guide, but also Sundays with Stephen, or Stephen on Sundays. Yeah, it's supposed to be now. Don't challenge me on that because I know it's not a Sunday now by the time I get this posted. Anyway, friends, as you can see, the title today, Institutionalized Evil, Culture Collapse, Treason, and Injectable Death. I don't for a minute expect this to stay up on the major platforms, given the amount of censorship that's abroad at the moment. If that's the case, we'll post links to Rumble and BitChute. It might take a little while, but we'll do that, guys. So we'll start with the quote here from Albert Einstein. 1 second, folks. Here we go. Blind belief in authority is the greatest enemy of truth. And this is the same message we keep hammering out time and time again. The book top right there, guys, Crisis, Cull or Coup. This is our best efforts to explain to people what human evil actually is, how it's come about, and how it's resulted in the chaos all around the world today. If we don't understand that, my friends, all of the best intentions in the world are not going to produce solutions, okay? But the solutions start with this type of thinking, like Albert Einstein. Blind faith in the authorities is the problem, guys, and it can all be systematically explained. But we're going to start today with a short testament to this wonderful man, Dr. Martin Feely, who recently passed away just a couple of weeks ago. I just want to make a very quick acknowledgement. I'm not aware that I met the man personally myself, but as an example of trusting or not trusting the authorities, this man was an Olympian. He was a rower in the Olympics when he was younger, a cardiac surgeon, by all accounts, a man who earned his right to claim to be a success in today's world. And by that, I'm talking about being a good success, a moral success. He was a good, decent, honorable man, which he proved when the Irish authorities, the HSE in particular, started their, let's call it the narrative, the pandemic narrative. And he was one of the few determined, righteous souls who objected. And the cost of him objecting was that he lost his job, his position, etc., and all of the public accolades that go along with complying with the establishment, you know. And I'm writing about this at the moment in another book that I hope to get out soon. I'll tell you more about that when the time comes. But again, the book at the top right, guys, will explain to you how and why it becomes necessary for brave souls like Dr. Martin Feely and others, of course, to stand up and proclaim the truth in the face of a great deal of pressure to do otherwise. All right, so God bless Martin Feely. Now, again, remembering, guys, that you'll see here now my wonderful son Danny there on the right-hand side a couple of years back. I'm making a point here about the Irish health system as an institution. Now, it could be, possibly, because of who we are, the Mannings, and because of my run-ins with Mayo General Hospital in particular, that we could be getting subjected to special treatment. And I don't want to make too big a deal out of this, guys. I just want to brush over the details. But I just want to point out the fact that this is the sort of thing that's going on a routine basis. Now, to cut a long story short, Danny has a moderate condition that needs to be treated, okay? I went to the doctor and got told that they had made a reference. Now, after laughing somewhat sardonically at the fact that it would require us to see a dermatologist, at which point they told us quite simply, dermatology 3 years. And I said, well, whatever. I said, we've got to deal with this issue, so put us on the list anyway. And Interestingly, we'd been on the list about 6 weeks or so, I imagine 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, when we received a letter in the post from the HSE, from the hospital and the HSE, basically saying, we've received a referral from your doctor for treatment for Danny. If you still want us to do it, please contact us by this method or that method, or to post this or go online, or whatever it was, and confirm that you still want this to happen. Otherwise, we're going to take you off the list. I was a bit appalled by that. Instead of wasting administration and time and money, sending out letters to try and, and funny enough, actually, on that occasion, we were away for a few weeks. And when I say a couple of weeks, when I got back and saw the letter, it was approaching the out of time date. So I put a response in there, photocopied it, and sent it off. To my surprise, about 6 weeks later, maybe a little less, a month later, I got another notice in the post, another written notice, again, from the same system, unsigned, as always. You never know who's sending these things. We're writing a second time to confirm that you want to stay on this list. And I thought, okay, look, somehow they've either lost or haven't received the first response. They're ignoring us, whatever the case might be. So I actually took the letter into the doctor and had the doctor sign again on the document and stamp it with the doctor's stamp to give it double authenticity. And then I sent that back to them. Well, all I'm saying to you guys, just work this out for yourself. This is arguably the most overblown, mismanaged health service in the world, okay? Our HSE. And this is what it resorts to. You've got a special needs son who needs treatment, and the response is this letter, which, if I bring it up a bit larger, says in so many words, we've tried to contact you now twice, you didn't respond, and as a result, you've been taken off the list. And if you want to be put back on the list, you have to go and make another GP appointment. Okay, so normally another GP appointment is another 70 quid, right? And so on and so forth. I'm just making a point here, guys. This is the system, okay? This is the system as we know it, so-called at work. How many people are getting paid full-time wages to indulge in this, pathetic nonsense? This, it's incompetence. It's industrialized incompetence, is it not? Yeah. But anyway, again, to reiterate the point, and I don't want to make too much of a big deal about this, okay? This also is a message to me. Now, all I'm going to say, my friends, I'm not here angling for hundreds of messages of sympathy and support and all the rest of it. I'll just put it as bluntly as this, is that something came up, a medical issue came up for me about 3 months ago, and it was, let's just say it was alarming. Look, you can all read through the lines, guys. None of us are immortal and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, it was alarming enough for the doctor to refer me to a particular department. Okay, now when I pressed the doctor about what was to happen next, I got, again, unsigned responses sent back to me. And this basically is what they had to say. Your referral has been sent to the such and such department at the HSE. The team will review the information and send you an appointment. We have little control over the length of time it takes for them to send you an appointment. As they have the information, we assume you'll receive an appointment based on their triage and the urgency needed. However, if you wish to avail of treatment abroad, you can do that if possible, and quicker. Kind regards, as you can see. Right now, I've adjusted that so as to keep privacy elements and all that, guys. Okay, but anyway, the point I'm trying to make, my friends, very simply is this: again, this is not about, please don't misunderstand me here. I'm not doing this. It's not about me personally, although I will tell you, and a couple of close friends were aware, that certainly for the last 2 months, I have been in a high state of anxiety, worrying about what was going on. And look, the long and the short of it was, I decided to take myself and Danny to another jurisdiction, as you can see in the letter there. And believe it or not, even whilst I'm still waiting, not only for a response to my 2 written responses to the HSE about Danny's situation, but any follow-up at all on this referral that was made now, I think 2 months ago. While I'm still waiting for all that, the issue is over and done with and done and dusted. I paid for a process, a minor procedure, let's call it, or whatever. Look, anyway, I don't want to make a big deal of it. Anyway, the good news is that the immediate alarm is over. I'm not going to need this this pointless referral now anyway. What's the point of having a system like this? What's the point of having a health system that even when they're alerted that there is something potentially very serious, fatal even, right, that, you know, nobody seems to care. Yeah, nobody seems to care. We know what's going on, guys. Okay. All right. So we'll move on from that, guys. I'm just making the point. Again, HSE as a large institution is the point I'm trying to make. Again, I make reference to the book. I keep doing this wrong. That side, sorry, up there on the top right of your screen. The Crisis Color Coup book. It explains how the system works, the cabal, the establishment, all of these intertwined, interlocked agencies, institutions, corporations, government departments all around the world, all pressing the same agenda, all elevating arguably the worst types of people up the corridors of power to be at the top, to be making the decisions, sociopaths and psychopaths, guys. It all knits together in a very logical, very understandable matrix. And you can then place yourself in that matrix. You see where you belong, and you see what you have to do to try and bring about corrections, hopefully, if you want to, you know, and reforms of a system which I keep describing as diabolical and which is proving to be the case on a daily basis. Okay, let's just keep going. I don't see what's coming up in the next, but oh yes, isn't this fun? So here we go. Having now just made the point about these large institutions, we see that Texas, the state of Texas, the Attorney General of Texas is suing Pfizer, alleging that it exaggerated the effectiveness of its COVID-19 injectables, etc., etc. Again, I'm trying my best to avoid getting the video triggered and pulled, but this is straight off another news source. Okay, so this is not me giving you opinions, or this is fact. Okay, so again, I'm making the point. Okay. Now, at last, some people are waking up and they're criticizing some of the, I wonder, can I see the slides before I bring them up? No, I can't. So we'll just pop them up as they come along. They are criticizing that they weren't given the right data, that the proper tests weren't done, and things like that, and they've decided to take legal action. Great and wonderful, in as much as using the law is arguably any good or effective against the big boys. But yes, here we go. So again, making the point that, you know, the data here at the bottom, it's a little bit hard to read, but the data here at the bottom, the UK government said that the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, now this was back 2 years ago, is reviewing data to determine whether or not they meet the robust standards of quality, safety, and effectiveness. That was before the rollout, guys. And of course, they concluded that they did. Now we know different. Again, we've got to keep asking the question, why do we keep trusting the authorities? Okay. Now, these 2 slides, by all means, take your time, guys, freeze the screen. And I'll get my little face out of the way there for you. Freeze the screen and have a look at this, because the point I'm trying to make, guys, is over on the left-hand side here. This is the back of a flyer that we created to promote the Crisis Color Coup book over there on the right. Okay, it was written in 2021. I want you to go through those points, and you can see, okay, and including things like the government. Our governments are working for them, not for us. Okay. The fact checkers and debunkers are sponsored by the cabal. Yeah, that the COVID-19 virus itself was engineered unlawfully in a lab. Now, we were saying this, guys. I was saying this, and I put all the facts and the data in the book. You can go back to it now and say, oh my God, this was written 2.5 years ago. Exactly, it was. And everything that was in there is proving to be true, largely because the research was based absolutely on facts. We did all the research, guys, ourselves, and thanks to other people like the doctor, of course, I've forgotten his name now, the doctor in America with the dicky bow, who did such thorough research into all of the patents and all the rest of it, but he's referred to in the book, of course. But here on the right-hand side, I'm not going to read all these out, guys, but this is just one page of some of the contents of the stuff that was inside the injectables, all right? And I want to come down now towards the bottom here, and I want you to look at something here, right down here, about 4 from the bottom. Human diploid fibroblast cells, aborted fetal cells from babies. Okay, this was one of the great red flags that set me off at the beginning. Just the hearing, before we knew all the science, just hearing that research was being done on aborted babies. And in some cases, these abortions are very questionable and so on. I mean, the intuitive internal humane shock, against the sacredness of human life. Just something goes off, and I'm like, there's something wrong here. And then you look at the next one. What else was in there? African green monkey kidney cells. These may carry the SV40 cancer-causing virus that has affected at least 30 million Americans, etc., etc. Why do I do this? Well, let's have a look at the next slide, guys. Let's see what's coming up next. The World Health Organization warns that monkeypox could spread internationally again. Now, again, guys, I'm making the point. How much can we trust these guys? We know stuff now that we didn't know 2 years ago. There was a reasonably forgivable argument at the time that, oh, well, you just believe the authorities. You do as you're told, don't you? Yeah, well, anybody now who still has that mindset, well, you can guess what my personal opinion is. I think you need to have your head examined. But whilst we're getting our heads around the fact that the authorities absolutely cannot be trusted, we have to also start projecting and thinking into the future. What will future societies look like when we as individuals wake up and take our small communities, take back our power from these behemoths, large, massive corporations, centralized governments, and sociopaths and psychopaths in high places that do not have our best interests at heart. Okay, so here they are now trying to alert us to this monkeypox thing. It's another scare tactic, guys. We're all supposed to leap around wondering about this. After a year in which 90,000 people got infected, they say, with monkeypox, and 140 people died, the World Health Organization downgraded the disease. Okay, but just in case, yeah, and if you remember, they tried to make a big thing of this for a while in the media. I think it was about a year ago. There was a few isolated cases and graphic pictures of people with pock marks, and monkeypox is coming, everybody panic. And I believe that there was an attempt at that time, when I say I believe, I know there was an attempt at that time to try and roll out another series of, another round of injections to protect us from this potential risk and threat. But for reasons that we've got to be grateful for, I think the general awakening and the general awareness of the public, it didn't take hold. But then we've got disease X, and here's Mr. Unpronounceable name, Boutros, whatever his name is, or is that him, from the World Health Organization, Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus, or whatever his name is. Anyway, I mustn't get him mixed up with Boutros Ghazi. They've got some great names, so I'll give them credit, But as you see here, this is just a screenshot from the Bing, the search engine. The only one I'd be inclined to really investigate would be the one on the bottom left here, which is from a source I've never heard of. But disease X is a thought experiment, not a real disease. But interestingly, they came up with this concept about disease X before the COVID pandemic. Okay, they came up with that idea, and disease X was, how did they put it, the known unknown, or the knowable unknown disease that might be coming, which raises the question, why didn't they call COVID then disease X? Interesting, is it not? Because this concept was originated before the COVID release and the pandemic. So now they're trying to tell us that this thing is going to be 20 times deadlier than COVID. Well, it's going to have to be, isn't it? Otherwise, nobody's going to even consider lining up with their shirt sleeves rolled up again, if they have any brains. It's only the ones who've had the brains injected out of them already, I would argue, that are going to do so. Now, this brings me now to a recent discussion online with Tucker Carlson. He's the very direct and very credible journalist in America. If you haven't heard of him before, guys, please look him up and go and listen to some of his podcasts. He's entertaining, you know, in his interviews. He's entertaining, he's direct, he's factual. He's not afraid to admit if he makes a mistake, things like that. But he's, you know, he's really, really credible. And what makes him even more credible is the fact that I believe he was fired from Fox News for tangling with the administrator there and set up his own channel. And I believe now he's got more subscribers to his channel than Fox News do. So that's a big success for, let's call it, the alternative non-legacy media. And I would encourage people to go and listen. But anyway, this is just a screenshot here, guys. Oh, I noticed you haven't got my face on the screen there, so for the moment. Yes, as you can see there, the Antichrist of all products. What on earth? What a statement to make, isn't it? Well, again, I want to draw your attention, friends, to the fact that this is the Surgeon General of Florida, so the top scientist and medical advisor in Florida, a very credible man. I listened to the whole interview. It's not that long. I think it's, what, 17 minutes, or is it 11 or 17 minutes if you can make it out at the bottom there. Worth listening to, guys. Go in and look for him. But it's very interesting because he explains, I'm not going to do it here, but he explains the mechanics and the technology of the injectables and why he has called for the state legislator to prevent them being given to anybody anymore. All right. But one of the points that he uses, he's explaining about how it can interfere in DNA and human DNA, how this will carry on for generations and so on in the particular way it's set up in these particular injections. And not only that, but he then uses this phrase. He says this is the Antichrist of all products, and he makes reference to the sacredness of human DNA and how it's being violated by some of these mRNA injectables. I hope you're getting the point, guys. All right. I'll try and keep this flowing now. I've got a certain time. I want to keep this under that certain time limit. Again, apologies, guys. Two things. First of all, not the usual tie. It's cold here, guys, so I've allowed myself to dress up for the occasion. Oh, yeah, I should possibly apologize for the haircut as well. But listen, getting to that age now where it's more important what we say and what we look like, of course. Now, if you recall back in the previous slide, you saw that Texas, the state of Texas, is suing Pfizer for apparent or alleged violations of their code of conduct, the law, proper testing, and all that sort of stuff. Yet, meanwhile, Pfizer has the audacity to sue Poland and Hungary over COVID deaths. Now, this will amount to multiple millions, tens and hundreds of millions probably, that were set up by our good friend Ursula von der Leyen, you know, the Commissioner of the European Union, whose husband is a CEO of one of these big pharmaceutical corporations. What a surprise. What a surprise. This man here, Albert Bourla, listen, I haven't met the man, but I can say without any fear of contradiction that you're looking at a classic psychopathic CEO, because it is amongst the CEOs of international corporations that we have the highest percentage of sociopaths and psychopaths operating, you know, in their careers. This is the type of career they get drawn to. This man epitomizes it. I've seen several interviews where he's been questioned and challenged. Yeah, he is smug. He is indifferent. He doesn't care two hoots how many people may have suffered or died because of his business activities, as long as profits are made. This is the tunnel vision that very many people in positions of authority around the world have. It's been something that has been corrupted, perversely corrupted, most latterly since the Second World War. Okay, again, it's all explained in the book, guys. It needs a little bit of explanation, but please, if you can, this is my one way of asking people, if you want to support us, buy that book or buy our other books, Criminality in the Irish Courts, The Absence of the Rule of Law. Understand what the authorities are doing, because we cannot rely on them to fix all the bad stuff that they're doing. It's simply not going to happen, guys. And that's why I say, with the greatest respect to all my friends and colleagues who keep going back into the system, trying to force the system to hold itself to account for the injustices and the nefarious activities they're visiting on us for a profit or for their own personal gain in one form or another. You know, it's a fool's game, guys. We've got to start thinking outside of the box. Now, there's good reasons to keep doing this, because every person that goes up against the system gets tricked, deceived, abused, doesn't get the service they deserve, gets their human rights trashed. Every time that happens, I'd be saying to people, keep going, keep doing it, and then tell everyone about it. That's the one positive outcome out of it. Don't just shut down and walk away. Don't just say, oh, sure, it's pointless. It's not pointless. Getting into the battle is what encourages other people to join in. Okay, not saying, oh, it's pointless, there's too many of them, they're too big, they're too powerful. They're not, guys. They're already losing. They don't fully realize it yet. There might be worse to come yet, but they're already losing. The bad guys are losing, and it's because goodness must prevail, even if we can't all live forever, and even if what we say and we do only has limited reach, we've still got to keep trying, guys. We've got to keep trying. We've got to do the best we can, all right? So I'm making a statement here, Mr. Burla. If you want to come after me and sue me, please do, for defamation. I'm pretty sure I could give you a few simple, basic, standard online sociopathy tests, and you'd absolutely ace them all, or other people would say you'd absolutely flunk them all. Whichever, you're going to be right up there, buddy, right up on the top end of the scale. And basically, guys, sociopaths and psychopaths are simply not to be trusted, not in a humane sense. Very good businessmen. They can be very good at certain jobs. You know, I'm not saying they're not technically or intellectually adept. I'm just saying they lack the humane qualities that I would say is what makes a human being truly human. Okay, if said in biblical terms, you could go as far as to say they lack a soul or a conscience. Okay, anyway, done with insulting Mr. Burla. He's got to have a thick skin, because, oh my God, him and others, you know, because look at them all. They're all still in positions of power and authority. Tony Fauci, another one. Yeah, what's happened to him? Nothing. You know, Ralph Barrick, the scientist who's they're still meddling with these diseases and these viruses and these bacteria in using this gain of function research, which is so dangerous. It's incredibly dangerous. And as long as there's profits in the end of it, they don't care, you know. And no, I think Mr. Burla claimed that he would be the first to take the injection just to prove that it was safe. Well, if he did, I withdraw my previous comments about his intelligence, okay? But I rather suspect that he got some sugary water or something, you know, and rather than the real thing. Okay, so as we talk about these topics, guys, I just want to point out again, these are a few little snapshots from some brave activists and truth speakers. I believe Edel Gillick was the organizer on this occasion, if I've got it right. But anyway, they're outside, I believe, outside one of Pfizer headquarters or one of their buildings in Dublin. And these are just some of the, you know, the sort of hold the line type tactics, which again was so effective, guys. You know, you and most of us now would have seen people out on the streets standing there for an hour or 2 hours in the bitter cold or in the rain and the wet, very occasionally in the sunshine. We haven't had an awful lot of it this year, but these are decent people whose only motivation, they realize something is wrong, they want to do something. And you know, just like many of us that have no other alternative at the moment but to sit back on our computers and you know, and do what we can in front of a screen here to try and encourage people. But all knowledge is educational. All knowledge is educational. Even that knowledge being to know something. Now, I'm not talking about now just mere beliefs or information. You know, things that are projected at you may not be true, but that which is true, once you understand it, that is knowledge, and knowledge is the beginning of wisdom, guys. Okay, I would be saying to people, anything you've heard here, anything you see here, double check it for yourself. There's one or two elements here that are not I haven't personally researched, but I share them with you on the belief, and I'll state that I believe that this is accurate information. But this stuff here, you know, I saw this on videos. I know they've done this, but these brave people, they knew that there was limited stuff they could do. They're not political figures. They don't have newspapers. They don't have channels, perhaps, where they can put information out. So one thing they knew they could do, they could go down to their local Hold the Line project and stand there in solidarity, quietly even. They didn't even have to say anything. All you had to do was take one of the signs that you felt comfortable holding up and stand there and hold it to the traffic. And it went from the first time these people started doing it. We have to give credit to them, guys, the guys who got this initiative going. Such a simple idea, but they got it going and they stuck with it. And the people who have stuck with it all the way through, you know, God bless you all for doing what you did. I think it was one of the most important pro-justice actions that all of us could take during the events of the last 2 or 3 years. But it was a simple act of conscience and of, you know, brotherly and sisterly love for your fellow Irish citizens, and so dare I say citizens, you know, people, your neighbours, your community. Because so many people are still stuck watching the mainstream media. They still trust the authorities. The penny hasn't dropped yet. That it's all a network, a nefarious network of deception that has got an objective and an agenda, and none of it is good for you if you're one of the ordinary people, all right? Or one of the great unwashed, or one of the useless eaters, or worse still, one of those of us who's been trying to speak out and has been targeted and attacked for doing so. But anyway, the point again I was making, guys, look at these, you know, these brave people out in the streets holding up these things here, bitterly cold weather, medical murder, speak out now. RTE have failed to inform you of the risk. This is absolutely true, guys, and this makes what they did unlawful. Now, I've got very limited confidence in the law these days because of my own personal experiences. But at the moment, it's still all we've got, short of, you know, something worse. And I'm not advocating that. I do think that there's an alternative. I think we're going to have to elect honest people. That's where it starts. It's what I said in the last campaign in 2020 when I ran, and they disappeared 56% of my vote. And they did it absolutely brazenly. A man called Fintan Murphy, an absolute scoundrel of a man, the county registrar in Mayo, responsible for all sorts of crimes in a lengthy career working for the state, but an absolutely shameful, disgraceful person. But, you know, one of the things that elect honest politicians, that was one of the quotes, although the two words don't marry very well, do they? Honesty and politics, they don't really marry very well. But I imagine what we're going to have to start thinking about, guys, please just reflect upon this for a minute, is we need to start, obviously we've got governments and everything. We can't just get rid of them and everybody just wanders around picking daisies and pricking fruit off the trees and everything will be hunky-dory. There's going to have to be a transition period. I don't know how long it's going to take, but the idea has to be planted that power has to be returned to the people. It has to be returned to small communities and to individuals. And the people who ostensibly work for us, that's our politicians. We pay for them, guys. I don't know how many times I've got to say this and explain this to people. They're supposed to be public servants. They're supposed to be working for us, but they're not. They're autocratic, mini minor dictators in their own little autocracies within the government systems. They all operate with little tyrants in charge, telling everyone else what to do. And if you don't do as you're told, you're out. You do as you're told, you get your wages and you get promoted, and then you're a bully in turn, and so on and so forth. They can't be trusted, guys. The voting system even has to be questioned now these days. We saw the transfer of many of the independent votes. That 56% of my vote I told you about was spread out amongst the bigger parties by the election officials. You know, and we did a documentary on it, a video on it, showed all the facts, all the data, complained to the government about it. No one responded. No one properly. You know, it was just brush-offs. Oh, we passed it this committee, we passed that committee. No, you didn't. You're lying. You didn't even deal with it. It's not in the minutes. So why are you lying? TDs, do you realize your clerk is lying to the public about activities you're doing in your sittings? Nobody answered. Yeah. They just don't care. They're in power. They've got the power. They're going to abuse it. And we've got to start being more discerning about the type of people that we even allow to present themselves as candidates to be elected, because most of them are either already sociopaths or psychopaths, or they're sociopaths in training who are advancing up that shady, diabolical pathway, to being parasites, predators and parasites for the rest of us. Okay, guys, let's see what the next slide brings us. Okay, so the point there, you see the Irish excess deaths is mentioned. Very briefly, those of you who don't understand this concept, it's there's a number there on the right. I think it's 38,000, 39,000 there. These are the official facts and figures that explain that if this were a, quote, normal year, covered, say, over the last 5 or 10 years, they would have expected to have had so many deaths in the population, and there is this many extra. And there is no direct accounting for it, and nobody seems to be interested in investigating this. Nobody in officialdom, that is. It's being left to people like us and friends and colleagues who are putting in their own time, their own effort and energy into finding out these facts and data and informing the public. Why isn't this a major issue on the topic of in the Dáil? Yeah, why aren't they all clamoring over each other? Why aren't the newspapers all falling over each other, and RTE and BBC and all the rest of it, saying, oh my God, what's going on? What's causing this anomaly? Because quite strangely, it seems to have only started happening after a particular decision by the establishment that we were all supposed to take certain medications, correct? Okay. I'm sure by now I've been banned, but let's see. We'll keep going. All right. Yes. Right. There's 2 slides here, guys. Well, let's have a look first of all at the one on the left, which is very interesting. All right. The one on the left is the, as you can see, Europe's shifting population. Just at the top there, you see the 3 or 4, 5 nations there. They've all changed since 1997, okay, to 2022. This is the decrease. So they've lost that percentage of their populations. Then on the right, you can see all of these European countries have gained. And look at Ireland. Little old Ireland, with our 4-point-something million population, has increased by some 40%. The graph on the right, guys, as I've seen at the bottom there, green countries have increased the population, red have decreased. The darkest greens are the highest, which is up there, Finland. Oh, no, sorry, that's Sweden, isn't it? Sweden to the right, I believe. And little old Luxembourg, but Ireland is right there, you know, second highest. But that was from 5 years ago, guys. And there, I think they've got us in at about 33 or 35%. In fact, it's up to 39%. And I'm just saying this, guys, in context of asking people to ask themselves, why is this happening? Why? Why is it happening in particular to Ireland? What's so special and unique about Ireland? Well, I'll tell you for a start, guys. First of all, we've got an absolutely, thoroughly, endemically corrupt state, okay? Worse than that, we're listed amongst the first world nations. So the bad guys, the corrupt agencies all around the world, can point at Ireland as a supposedly first world democracy and say, look at Ireland. And then they point at Ireland and say, look at its financial success. Why? Because all of the corrupt major corporations have their headquarters here, including Pfizer, for example. They have a bank here, yeah, including, you know, Facebook and you know, Google and all these big companies. They're here for a reason, because Ireland leads the world in shadow banking as well. Isn't that wonderful, guys? We lead the world in shadow banking, as it sounds, dodgy banking practices, more so than the Caymans, more so than the you know, the offshore islands of the UK, Switzerland, and none of them can compete. None of them. Ireland is streets ahead, guys. Streets ahead. You know, I won't do the chart today, but on top of that, I just found out recently that, believe it or not, we have the highest number of empty properties of any European country. Now, I'm not quite sure if that's percentage or actual figures, but I remember I just heard that today, and I thought I'd throw that in because it's all in context of this open borders policy, which we didn't have to sign up to. As a matter of fact, we've got an opt-out clause under the European Union. So you have to ask yourself, why are our politicians who are arguably some of the most practiced and corrupt in the world. All right. I've had many, many dealings with lots of politicians writing letters. It's all obfuscation, deferment, avoidance, the very rare occasion where you get one of them to actually represent something important in the Dáil, something to do really urgently to do with the people. It's masked and it's tied up in ribbons and bows. It can only go in a certain direction. You're not allowed to name anybody. You're not allowed to even identify them indirectly by saying what post they hold and all that nonsense. Secrecy all across the board, right, all about parliamentary privilege. Privilege, you mean license to be a corrupt so-and-so, get away with it and be paid by the Irish public while you laugh all the way to the bank. Isn't that right? But you see Ireland's unique geographical location as well. This is what we talk about, institutionalized evil. You know, Ireland is the whipping boy. When I say the whipping boy for the powers that be in Brussels and in Davos and the World Economic Forum, okay? Leo Varadkar is one of their proteges. Micheál Martin's been photographed up there on the stage with Klaus Schwab and co. It's all these leaders around the world. They all came through the World Economic Forum system, and they have been planted in these national cabinets and these as heads of organizations and governments for a reason, guys. Ireland, because of its geography, because of its the fact that it's an island, it's small, it's manageable, it's intrinsically corrupt. Most other countries are large enough for it to be more difficult to industrialize the corruption. But in Ireland, they've got it all stitched up. The whole thing is stitched up. Nobody arises to a position of power and authority in this country, including the judiciary, senior politics, head of the Garda Síochána and whatever, unless they know which side their bread is buttered and what their actual job really is, which is to protect the interests of the system, which I'm telling you now again, guys, for eons, the interests of the system conflict absolutely with the interests of the people. All right. And in this case, as I say in the book, the question mark, a rhetorical question mark, is it a crisis? Absolutely it is. Is it a cull? Absolutely it is. Is it a coup? Absolutely it is. And it's a coup by these moneyed elites and their political toadies and lackeys to basically recreate the world in their own image. And their own image is not the image of the God that decent people aspire and love. It's a different deity altogether. Okay. And again, more on that coming soon. So moving then onwards, we say so at least the Mail covered this story. And in the Mail, I won't go into it all now today, guys, but it's all over the internet. There are 10, if just look it up, guys. They name the 10 businesses that acquired the most money in 6 months by the orders of Rodri Gorman, who, don't forget now, this is the guy who was promising that, you know, they were going to do X, Y, and Z, and he went exactly 100% against it. The other thing I'm asking for, and this is an invitation, by the way, for you guys out there, if anybody has a picture of, I think it was a pale blue leaflet that Rodri Gorman and the government, the Irish government, they approved the publication of this document. It was done in about a dozen different languages and sent out to places like India, Africa, China, Albania, the Middle East, Syria, places like this. These pamphlets were sent out actively encouraging people to come into Ireland, promising them that they would have a home. They'd have a home within 4 months. They'd be looked after immediately, fed, you know, they'd be given a stipend and all the rest of it. Within 4 months, they'd have their own home. That was the promise in it. Please, somebody, I've been looking for this. I can't find it. I've gone looking in government departments, so I'm sure somebody has a copy of that out there. If you have it, please, guys, just fire it over to me, Facebook or somewhere, anywhere. It doesn't really matter, you know, and I will use it in future research, because it's really important that people understand, as the politicians, and Rodri Gorman is amongst one of the most devious people that I've ever had the misfortune of coming across. He sit there smug with this barmy smile as he wrecks cultures, as he wrecks families, as he delivers pornography into the schools. You know, obviously he's a childless man. We know his sexual orientation himself, not that it's that much of a deal, other than he's trying to force what is in effect. Well, anyway, let's not guarantee that I get pulled. Let's look at what's going on here. So this man at the bottom here, Seamus Banty, Seamus Banty McInerney. I can never say that name. McInerney. Anyway, it's written down there, guys. It's one of those. For me, it's a tongue twister. I say it in reference. He was number 2 on the list, right? Connected to the GAA. And this man on the right, Fergal Deary, has been in prison for over 2 years now. He's waiting for the return of documents from GSOC and Gardaí. I'll tell you what, I get occasional phone calls from Fergal in prison. He's got to be respected, guys, for his determination. But he was a businessman in Monaghan. He had a up and flourishing nightclub. It was raking in the money. It was a threat to a couple of other hotels and businesses in the area. And this Mr. Banty, and believe it or not, I got a phone call, let's just call it an advisory phone call, that more or less warned me not to mention his name in context of the Fergal Deary case. Well, this is what I think of that warning, guys, okay? Banty here, McInerney, is heavily implicated in, let's just say, questionable activities in association with the Allied Irish Bank that appear to have deliberately and unlawfully and unscrupulously tried to deny Fergal Deary access to his own business, which was flourishing. The stories out there, guys, if you want to look for it, look for Master Deary's. I believe the Irish Inquiry will be doing an update on this soon. As I get some information, I'll be doing the same. But anyway, it needs to be mentioned, guys. You see what's going on, okay? We're getting there, guys. Just a couple more slides left. So here we go. This was recently in Rosscray at the Racket Hall Hotel. Well, look, I'm just going to read out a few, guys. Just a couple of other places while you're watching this slide. Just ever so quickly. Breffy House Castle Bar being covered regularly by Steve Kerr from the Irish Inquiry, doing some very brave and insightful work there. He's really getting to the core of it. He's getting attacked. He's getting slandered by people. Like I said, the audacity of them, you know, guys like Ger Deere, previous private secretary or assistant to Enda Kenny, and apparently only got the job because, you know, he had been caught with his hands in the till and had to just behave himself from there on, well, whatever, you know. But they have the audacity then of making slanders against honest, decent reporters like Steve Kerr. But anyway, Castle Garrett House in Claremorris is another one. This is where they're bringing in, you know, tens, dozens, scores, hundreds of people. And again, anybody who for a minute thinks I'm a racist, you know, you're barking up completely up the wrong tree. My wife was Japanese. I've lived in many different countries around the world. I had 2 black brothers and sisters in my family, adopted into the family, and so on. Look, it's not going to wash. It's not to do, you know, any individual, you take them on their merits and you treat them with respect and decency. They also are the victims. Many of them that are being brought in are the victims of government policy that is trying to use them to sow chaos in our cultures so as to get a reaction which will then justify marching out the RoboCops here, who, as you can see, and those of you who may not have seen it yet, please go in and have a look at the Racket Hall Hotel incident and see how heavy-handed these boyos came in. And you have to ask yourself, you know, after a vote of 98.7 of no support by rank and file Gardaí and the Garda Commissioner there, sorry, he's blocked out with the book, I can't move it there, Drew Harris. On the left there, there's Helen McEntee. Those of you that are following the channel, and you'll know that we have written to her about the Judicial Conduct Committee and the ridiculous scenario where they've got a career reprobate in charge of that, blocking all legitimate complaints about judges. No response from her either, but she's out there pontificating and no one's above the law and all this sort of stuff. All lies, guys. These are your authority figures. They wouldn't be there if they were honest, okay? But the question has to be asked of, and there was 48 of these guys in a line, believe it or not, guys. 48, and that was only one line of them. And they're there to allow a busload of refugees or immigrants of some sort into the last functioning hotel in Rosscray. And true to form, it was predicted before they arrived, once they knew that there was going to be a presence in the crowd, instead of it being the usual troop, and I use the word carefully, the usual troop of military-aged males Many of them, 70% is it, undocumented, coming into Dublin Airport. Instead of all being military-age males, it was, of course, parents with children. Asians, though. Asians, it looked like. Asians, and as somebody remarked, since when was Asia part of the European Union, or since when was Africa part of it? I'd be the first one, honestly, to help somebody in distress. But this is a government globalist policy. They're not doing this with any regard whatsoever to the Irish culture, to the Irish population, to the needs and the wishes of the Irish people, because 75% people in a poll voted against what they're doing. And they just carry on regardless, guys. There's a lot to be noticed here and a lot to be learned, a lot to be understood. Okay, Urlingford as well. There was a protest camp in Urlingford that got trashed mysteriously while the protesters, they're camping there to try and protest against stuff, and a caravan got burnt out. Rosslare, there's a nursing home. Abbeyville House in Fermoy. Barrington or Barringtown in sorry, I've got that. I can't read my own writing. I'm sorry, guys. Bargainstown, is it in Finglas, I believe? And the Capuchin Centre in Carlow. These are just some, guys, places around the country. You know, this is the next stage to the hold the line, I believe. We've got to get out to these places and at least make the Gardaí, who have voted 98.7% no support in their leadership, but still they continue doing their bloody jobs. Remember, guys, that's what they said at Auschwitz. We're just doing our jobs. It is neither a moral excuse nor a legal excuse anymore. And I make a prediction, guys, that even as we see droves of decent Gardaí leaving the force as it is now, it's become a force. As we see droves of Gardaí leaving the Garda Síochána, who do you think is going to replace them? Because the government wouldn't last 5 minutes without having the buffer zone of the supposed law, which is never, it hasn't been law for a long time, guys. It's just a bunch of making up rules that they're making up as they go along, abusing their position of power and authority to override our constitution, to override the existing laws, and just claim it because they've got all of these dirty judges in their pockets. They've got all of these toadies and lackeys, solicitors and people in the legal profession that would just have sold their souls long ago. And then finally, they've got these. And I say it, like, you know, guys, there's a lot of you guys that know me personally. You know, when I'm dealing with you personally, I'm always respectful. I'm always decent. Even when I've been attacked, even when I've been falsely jailed and everything, I've always tried to show respect to the individuals that I've dealt with. But I call you collectively fools and morons for just following orders from someone you voted 98.7% no confidence in him, yet you still do as you're told. In other words, you know that what you're doing is wrong, and it doesn't seem to matter. Finally, guys, we wrap up now, guys. We finally news yesterday that poor, and I do mean it, poor Ian Bailey passed away of a heart attack. He was waiting for surgery. Look, I've suffered various levels of stress over the years, especially since we started engaging with the Irish system. Thankfully, I've never been accused of a murder that I never committed. I just want to put this out there, guys, because the poor family as well, the French family, the Duplantier family out there, they've been sold a version of the story. And they're obviously in a great deal of pain and distress because they still don't know. They believe a certain version of events. I went down and interviewed Ian Bailey in Cork after getting a phone call from him in the early days of the Integrity Ireland Association. So this would be about 10 or 12 years ago. Maybe about 12 years ago. And I went down to Cork, and while we were there, I went to meet him, and he was in his little stall and everything. And I wasn't, he was an eccentric character. You know, he had slightly unusual mannerisms and the big broad hat. And he did poetry, and tall man, you know, and quite an imposing figure, still had a clipped sort of English accent and all that. But he was slightly eccentric and would have been noted as such, I suppose, in a mainly native Irish Cork community, especially when he arrived there, I suppose. And that may have had something to do why he was targeted, the odd one out, the unusual character, a little bit flamboyant and outspoken. But we hadn't been taught. He was already a broken man when I met him, though. And we sat down in the cafe and we were having a cup of coffee and we were talking about it. And I asked him some very direct questions, really straight questions, because everything I'd seen about the way he was being treated seemed to fit this pattern that most decent people that had the courage, to stand up to the system were getting the same sort of treatment. And I wasn't 10 minutes into the conversation with him, and I arrived at the conclusion before it became popular that yes, this man was framed. He was set up, and details such as a 5-bar farmer's gate, guys. This is the big industrial gate that you see on fields that you open up to let cows in and out. Okay, 5 bars, about 5 foot high, metal gate with bloody handprints on it that was taken away by the Gardaí and then lost. Lost. Can you believe it? It's not credible, guys. Bloody fingerprints on it and everything. It got lost. All right. I won't go into more details about this, except for, then there was the local drug addict who was given drugs from the evidence room from the Gardaí to try and tempt Ian Bailey into doing something wrong or making a confession. All of this sinister, insidious, nasty, and even the DPP at the time, I think his name was Hamilton, wasn't it? The DPP at the time, the file was sent to him, and he said, no, this man has got no case to answer. But who was listening? Who even took notice of the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecutions? And they continue to persecute this poor man. I remain convinced that he was innocent of this crime, and I am, we'll say a prayer for him tonight. I wish his family and his friends solace, including the Duplantier family in France, as they also continue to search for answers. Some nonsensical article in the paper says, oh, the cold case review will continue despite Mr. Bailey's death. How long does it have to go on for, guys? 1997 was in the incident, This is ridiculous. Over 25, 26, 27 years, there's something sinister, definitely something sinister happened. Somebody, I'm almost certain, somebody connected. And again, there are certain theories out there, but, it was said not too long ago that by Mr. Bailey himself, that it was an Irish person who was still alive at the time that he made the statement not so long ago that he believed was responsible. Anyway, let's hope the truth comes out. But anyway, so that's the second last slide for tonight, guys. Time to wrap this one up. Thank you again for all the kindness and support. That's just our 3 little logos there, guys. If you want to support us, you can go to this Truth Matters. It's crisiscullcoup.com. There's a place there you can help us if you want to, guys. We're doing our best to create an environment where we can continue this mission. As I said earlier, none of us are immortal. We have to be aware. Or is it that some famous person said once, it's later than you think. We must do what we can, my friends. And thank you again for all the love and support and the good messages. And please do what you can, every one of us. It's never too late to wake up, guys. It's never too late to advocate for the truth, okay? But you must go looking for it, okay? God bless. I'll end this now before we hit the hour, and hopefully talk to you next Sunday.